Welcome back, Kings fans. I am Jesse Cohen. This is All the Kings Men Live, presented by MANSCAPED. MANSCAPED is a partner of the LA Kings. Thanks to this revolutionary company, manscaping accidents are a thing of the past. Just get yourself the Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. Inside, you'll find products like their Lawnmower 3.0, which is advanced skin-safe technology, so this trimmer won't cut you. Everything you need to keep trimmed and smelling nice is in the Perfect Package 3.0. You can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code KINGSMEN at manscaped.com. Just go to manscaped.com and use the code KINGSMEN, one word, KINGSMEN. Now, you'll notice that Carlin Bathe is not joining me today, but I do want to welcome in everybody watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and of course on Twitch. If you want to get your questions asked, it'll be a little bit tougher this week, but we will still try and do it. Joining me this week, however, in light of Carlin's absence, is General Manager of the Ontario Reign, Rich Seeley. How are you doing today, Rich?
I'm doing well, all things considered. Jesse, how are you?
All things considered, I am also doing well. I appreciate you joining me, and I appreciate you being a member of the Bald Brotherhood. Always nice to get one of us on the show with me. We got a ton of questions about the Reign, but first I want to ask about you, because your professional career started not too long before the start of the Manchester Monarchs, and so I'm curious from your perspective about the evolution of the development side, not just of the Kings, but of professional hockey. It feels to me, as a longtime fan of the sport, and I can remember in the late 90s, before the AHL really established itself as the exclusive development league of the National Hockey League, you had the IHL, you had the WCHL, you had the ECHL. You know, the Kings had the Long Beach Ice Dogs, the Phoenix Roadrunners. There were a million different leagues you could play in. Do you think it's helped the sport to have this sort of consolidation of development into one league?
Yeah, I think it has, to be honest with you. Back in those days you mentioned, I think in my early on experience, the battle between the American League and the IHL was kind of the battle for what you'd call AAA supremacy. And a little bit over time, I think the one thing that the AHL did really well and kind of figured out is it really it pitched itself to the NHL as the main development league. Like, hey, we want to take a development perspective and help have all the good young talent that is acquired through the NHL organizations come through the doors of the AHL club. So that ended up working well. I think it was a really good pitch with the NHL. And then I would say, in 04, 05 and some of the lockouts when it came into place, the importance of development in being successful in the NHL, I think, has helped that come along with the implementation of a salary cap and some of the structures of the environment in the NHL has changed. And I think part of that environment has been conducive to the growth and kind of prominence of the American Hockey League, where it's kind of gone hand in hand, and development at the NHL level across all organizations is so important. And I think that, the timing of the American League pitch for that development league is just it's worked out quite well.
So you're drafted by the LA Kings in 1997. You play 1 year for the Lowell Lock Monsters. 2 years for the Lowell Lock Monsters, and then a few seasons with the Manchester Monarchs, who were at the time the Kings' AHL affiliate. You wind up coaching the Manchester Monarchs when they were the Kings' ECHL affiliate. You're now the general manager of the Ontario Reign, now that they are the Kings' AHL affiliate. So how has the Kings, specifically the Kings side of the development program, evolved over the course of your career?
Yeah, drastically, to be honest with you. When I first started, as you mentioned, I started with the Lowell Lock Monsters, who is an American League franchise. And at the time, we actually split with the New York Islanders. So we split an American Hockey League team where half the prospects were Islander prospects and half the team were King prospects. And then that evolution changed. We moved up the road to Manchester. They opened a new building there, and the Kings had their whole American League team to the one organization themselves. And it came out like gangbusters, to be honest with you. Even there, they had great fan support, and a lot of good players, came through the doors in Manchester. So that was pretty big, and they were, pretty prominent, I would say, early on in the 12 and 14 Stanley Cups for the Kings. I think, you look back at the American League, and the development of a lot of those players played a pretty big role in those teams' ability to be successful. And then furthering that, the development of a lot of players that have come to the door, which you might look back on as probably really one of the key components, or one of the fairly large or decent sized piece of the puzzle for the Kings to be successful. And I think it's continued to evolve today with obviously the close proximity now that the Kings have, and luxury we have with the American League club being so close, and I think it's been pretty positive.
Before we get into the Reign, the offseason they've had, and what we can look forward to in 2020, 2021, let's talk about your career. You play in Manchester. You have a couple more seasons in the AHL, and you go and play overseas. And then there's a little gap here where I lose track of you in my research between the end of your playing career and the start of your coaching career. When did you decide that you wanted to go into coaching?
It was right when I'd finished playing. I was fortunate enough to play for a little while, and as I kind of say, I ended up fooling them for 12 years or so. And I was fortunate. The last part of the last year of my playing career, I had a little bit of enough foresight to continue some education. So I took I completed a master's degree in sports management, which was really beneficial for me just in my transition from playing to what I called real world. And my first year after completing that, I worked as an assistant coach at a prep school back east, and that's where I really first knew that I wanted to continue on and with the game of hockey, and in a couple different capacities. I really enjoyed working with the kids. I just really enjoyed it. So that kind of sparked it for me. And I think it's important to follow a lot of your passion, what you're passionate about. And then for me, that quickly came prominent, and I was able to recognize that hey, I really am passionate. I do enjoy it, and I've been fortunate enough to have a few different roles as I've moved forward with this.
So the Kings hire John Robleski from the U.S. National Team Development Program this summer, and we had a chance to talk to him a few weeks ago for the podcast that we run here, All the Kings Men and the Rainy Day podcast. And one of the questions I asked him, and I'm going to throw it to you as well, he's 39 years old, so he is what is technically known as a Zennial, as are you and as am I. And a Zennial is a micro generation in between Gen X and Millennials. And the reason that somebody much smarter than me decided to observe this phenomenon is that we grew up without the internet. But now in our adult lives, we've had it, right? Like, we were young enough when the internet reached ubiquity that we can use it, we're familiar with it, it's a part of our life, but we can remember a world where it never existed. I'm curious, especially with you having gone and gotten your education in sports management, was it important to you when it came time to hire a new coach for the Ontario Reign? Is it important moving forward that you have somebody who is familiar with a world with the internet? I mean, is it that much of a difference on, sort of kids these days, that they have social media, that they have smartphones, that their experience growing up is sort of completely different than the generations that preceded ours?
I think it's important that you have an eagerness to learn about the people coming through your dressing room doors today, and the different environments that they've grown up in. I don't really necessarily you have to know one way or another, but you have to have an eagerness to learn. And I guess the way I frame it is, I don't know that a coach's messages drastically change over the years, meaning, hey, we still want hard work and accountability and being a good teammate, and having a good attitude and bringing some enthusiasm. Our players need to bring that. But I do believe that the delivery of those messages, those teaching points, definitely need to cater to the people that are coming through the dressing room doors, the athletes that are coming through. And it'd be foolish to think that the generations are slightly different and have different nuances to them. And I think it's important that any educator, teacher, coach, or in management understands some of the nuances and the ways to work through some of those communication things.
So let's get into the roster and the actual upcoming season for the Ontario Reign. Currently, under AHL contract, we've got Brett Sutter, Blaine Byron, Jacob Doty, and Nick Halloran. Was that his name?
Correct.
That's not a lot. I was desperately trying to find an actual link last night to the AHL veteran limit rule.
Yep.
Near as I could tell, you're allowed 5 players with more than 126 games, is it? Um,
Uh, yeah, well, you're allowed to dress 5 players with over 320 American League games.
right.
Although it would be an exempt this year that's new coming in, it would be an exempt if the player as of July 1st was 25 years of age or under. So even if he
But
had 340 games but was under 25 by July 1st, he would be excluded from a veteran status. And then there is something which we call an exempt vet who has anywhere between under 320 games but above 260 games.
260, that was the number I was looking for. I apologize. It looks like Brett Sutter is the only player who meets that criteria, whereas last season it felt, at least early in the year, like you had maybe 6 or 7 guys between Mario Kempe and Brett Sutter and Lance Boma. Yep. This year, you've got a ton of kids coming in, whether it's from college, whether it's from overseas, 19, 20, 21 years old. How young do you expect this roster to be coming up?
Yeah, I would imagine the average age will probably be around 22 and a half and around there. It's going to be a younger club. But that's exciting too. I mean, if having a lot of these young kids come in and go through the process together, I think is going to pose some challenges, but also some excitement. The group of kids that are potentially coming through our doors are players that we feel are going to play roles within the Los Angeles Kings roster in a short period of time. So that's very exciting for us to have that responsibility. I think it's nice to be able to augment some of that young talent with the right people and characters, players with experience and how they hold themselves, how they work, and we feel we have one of those in Brett Sutter who will be returning, and a couple other guys that are on American League contract possess a lot of those characteristics and capabilities. So maybe there might be an addition of 1 or 2 more, but we'll be a younger club than what we have been in the past.
Zach Dooley asked Coach Robleski about the balancing act between development and winning, right? And he pointed out that in a game-by-game, moment-by-moment setting, the decision may become clearer when it comes to trying to win a game, but if you pull back and try and take the long view of developing players, the decisions might get a little bit muddled. I'm not going to ask you what's more important. I'll just ask you this. What does development look like in 2020, 2021, when you have guys like Cole Hults, who are coming out of celebrated collegiate careers, or whether it's Rasmus Kupari, who's coming from overseas? Does every player have the same timeline? Obviously they wouldn't, but does development look the same to every player, or is it detailed to each player's strengths?
Yeah, I think development for each player is going to be unique to their skill set and where they're at. Obviously, we're excited about a lot of these players. Come from varied backgrounds, whether it be college or pro leagues over in Europe or in the CHL and the junior leagues. But everybody's going to be slightly different. Some guys adjust to the pro game is easier than others, and some it takes a little bit longer. And our job is to make sure nobody's left behind. And obviously, we want to do that as soon as possible and move them along and have them ready to put on a Kings jersey as quick as possible. Who wouldn't? But I don't know. I don't know how to put it. I guess I don't know if turning up the heat in the oven is going to cook your cake any quicker. It's going to burn it. You know what I mean? So there is a process to it, and that's okay. And typically they'll need a little bit of time if we want to get them pro ready as quick as possible. So we'll work through that. And every player is slightly different. And part of it comes on the onus of the player too. He's going to have to come into our environment. What kind of conditioning? What kind of shape does this person come in? What kind of work has he put in since his last, college or junior season? So as much as we're excited about them, but it'll be a reassessment period a little bit too when they come in through our doors here in December.
I really like that cake metaphor. I like it a lot. One of my favorite metaphors to lean on is the notion of a team as a recipe. You can have the ingredients that you need, but if you don't combine them correctly, you're not going to wind up with what you want. When it comes to specific positions, obviously the Kings have a lot of center depth, and there's some talk that either certain players will have to shift to wing or they could be packaged as a trade, or, maybe they'll just be an incredible battle for, specific spots. But when it comes down to shifting guys to wing, or asking some players to focus more on defense and to sort of adopt a role that they're not used to yet, is that the sort of thing that happens at the AHL level, or is that a conversation that happens, from a broader organizational standpoint?
Well, there's a couple levels to that question or conversation. I think one, I'm happy to have this conversation or this challenge of, hey, we've got a lot of centermen. What are we going to do with all these high-end prospects? How's this all going to work? Those are conversations I'm willing to have all day, every day. Those are good challenges for us. I think the one, I guess if a player comes into the American League and a coach, talking to his team the first time and says, raise your hand if you've played on the power play last year or in your career leading up to this point, I think pretty much the whole team at one point or another would raise their hand, and that's not going to be the case at the American League. As you move up in levels, it gets more difficult, and as we go, we will continue to define roles for our players and based on their skill set and things they can do. So I think it's a good challenge to have. I think on one level, we want to continue to develop players from some of their skill sets. If there are certain situations where we think it's most conducive for a player to experiment going from center to wing, that might be the best for the player's growth and development to play in the NHL and align with the Kings' interest, then we'll have those conversations for sure. But I think for a lot of it, coming into the pro is where they figure out exactly where their game's going to be. And some players might need to place a greater emphasis on what they had on centermen on faceoffs, or with wingers with wall play, or defensemen on retrievals. Like, there's so many things that go into a player continuing to develop, and getting into the American League is your first introduction to kind of little small details in the game, and really how difficult it is, and what kind of work ethic is needed to go from being an everyday NHLer. And for a long time, there's a big difference in signing your first pro contract. For us, that's just the beginning, and for some guys, that's those are probably the little learning lessons that go along, particularly in the first year of pro hockey.
Last question, and I'll let you go on about your day. Was there one player last season for Ontario that really caught you by surprise and exceeded expectations?
Yeah, I don't know if it exceeded expectations or caught by surprise, but one player that I was really excited about was Mikey Anderson. A lot of the players I like a lot, and unique skill sets, but he was one that for me, had watched some video, had high hopes and aspirations for, but just really liked the way he played, the composure, the way he carried himself, his work ethic, his ability to make some small plays, his attention to detail. There's just a lot of things that go into his game that I felt he was a little bit mature beyond his years, and quickly began to appreciate, why he had such success at Minnesota Duluth and with the U.S. national junior team and program there in his World Junior stints. So he was one that I just thought did a great job as a young defenseman coming into the league. It's very difficult, and I thought he handled that transition well, and hope he can continue that development.
Feels like everybody we talk to about Mikey Anderson swears that he'll be wearing a letter for the Kings someday, or some other team eventually. Is that a future you see for him?
I don't know if it's fair to put. I think there's capabilities there. I don't know if it's fair to say, hey, yeah, he's destined to do that. I mean, a lot of work still needs to go into his game, but he's definitely got. I would say definitely got a lot of characteristics and qualities that I would definitely want. A player having a letter on my jersey. So hopefully he can continue to put that work in and development and develop, and that's. It's going to be on us to try to put him in the right situations, and it's going to be on him to make sure he's putting the work in over the summer times.
Excellent. Well, we thank you very much for joining us, Rich. We appreciate it. We look forward to talking to you again.
No, absolutely, Jesse. Thanks for having me on. Have a good afternoon.
It's one all, one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
Thanks again to Rich Seeley for joining us. Thanks to Manscaped for promoting us. And thanks to you for watching. We've been gone for a couple weeks, but now we're back. And a few stories, LA Kings stories specifically, taking place in the interim. First up, a new contract for Austin Wagner.
God, this guy can skate.
He
doesn't respect the speed of Wagner.
Gon' play that, take you down, I'ma say that. Might need me a couple dollars, telling you now this payback. So I'm gone, finally back in my home. I'm working like so much, they swear I had me a clone. Ballin' can't beat me up, cause I'm back in my zone now.
Wagner scores! Wagner has a breakaway. Wagner scores!
No one is catching.
Let me into my zone, let me into my zone.
Let me in my zone, please don't let me in.
So we did our player evaluations for Austin Wagner a few weeks ago. I talked to Jim Fox and Sean Tierney from Charting Hockey. I would encourage you to check it out at lakings.com/podcast if you don't already subscribe to All the Kings Men, which is our regular audio podcast. Austin Wagner's a fascinating player. He obviously has elite speed, but obviously he knows it. His teammates know it. It's a topic of conversation among the fan base and the team that he struggles to finish on the opportunities that he creates using his speed. But in talking to Jim Fox, and again, I encourage you to listen to the full conversation. He does more than just skate fast, right? He plays, every second he has the puck or his line has the puck is the second that the other team doesn't. And so even though they're not scoring, the overall impact of the game tips more towards offense than defense. And he's improved his defensive game a ton. But, Jim had a lot of sort of insight into the impact that speed has on Wagner himself and on the line. I don't want to step on the conversation too much. Like I said, I would just encourage you to go listen to it. But 3 years at just over $1 million a season for Austin Wagner in a flat cap era with the league minimum going up over the next few seasons. I think this is a great contract, not only for Austin, but also for the Kings. I'm excited about it. Another player signing a new contract, however, is Carl Grundstrom. The first year of that deal is a two-way deal, meaning he gets paid less at the AHL level. And the second year is a one-way deal, meaning he gets paid the full amount no matter which league he's playing in, the NHL or the AHL. I would fully expect Carl Grundstrom to make the Kings this coming season out of training camp just because of waiver eligibility rules, his age, where he's at in his stage of the career. And looking at the Kings roster, realistically, I think if you look at the top line of Alex Iafallo, Anze Kopitar, and Dustin Brown, I don't think anybody would be surprised if that is the top line. Then you've got Kempe, Velarde, Furk, Carter, Lizotte, Wagner, Moore. Those guys are all under contract. Amadio, I always forget about Amadio. Apologies to Michael Amadio. But that's another 8 guys to go along with the 3 guys on the top line. That's 11 players. Once you factor in Carl Grundstrom, that's 12. Training camp's going to be really interesting. Not a ton of spots, but a lot of roles up for grabs, I think. There's conversation I see where people assume that Adrian Kempe will play the left wing with Gabriel Velarde and Martin Furk. I'm not sure that that's necessarily true. I mean, I think he'll be given the opportunity, but that line of Kempe, Lizotte, and Wagner, right? We saw in that video that everybody loves so much for Austin Wagner, speed kills. And that line, the 3 of them combined have speed to spare. It wouldn't take a lot to push that line towards a little bit more production. And should that happen, I think it'll be really interesting. Carl Grundstrom, Austin Wagner getting new contracts. We're still waiting on Sean Walker to sign an extension. He is an RFA, and we're still waiting to find out whether or not Ben Hutton, Joakim Ryan, or Trevor Lewis will be brought back, all of those unrestricted free agents. And, of course, the chatter everywhere is that the Kings will be looking for a left-handed defenseman in the free agency market. I don't know that that's true or not. I think you just bring back Ben Hutton, but that's just me. I think that is going to wrap it up, though, for this week. Carlin will be back next week. If you have any questions out there in Twitch, now would be the time to throw it out there. I'm looking at it. What's everyone having for lunch? The Kings account wants to know. Personally, I'm having a turkey sandwich. So anyway, thanks very much to the Kings and everybody working behind the scenes to make this happen. Thanks for Rich Seeley for joining us. Thanks to everybody who's watching on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch, and listening to this as a download later this week when it's available. For everyone at the Kings, I'm Jesse Cohen. Thanks for watching, Kings fans. We'll talk to you next week.